Disappearing outlaws. What if you were there? We've been camped in these freezing hills for nearly 2 weeks. I'm sick of it. 2 weeks of sleeping during the day and then creeping out like thieves in the night to watch over the homes of the Kellys' sympathisers. The superintendent seems to think that sooner or later the Kellys won't be able to resist the lure of home and will be able to nab them. The trouble is the Kellys are cleverer than the senior police. We're watching Maggie Skilling's house. That's Ned's eldest sister. She's just about the head of the family now, what with her brothers on the run and her husband and mother in jail for the Fitzpatrick business. She looks after her land, her children, and her younger brothers and sisters. We're pretty sure she feeds her outlaw brothers and their mates as well. I don't sleep well in the daylight. Yesterday was as bad as ever. Every time I woke with a rock in my side or the sun on my head, I'd smell bread baking. She's got a lot of mouths to feed, has Maggie, but by the smell of it, this batch of loaves was for an even bigger crowd. Last night I was wet through from sitting out in a fine drizzle. The light had gone out in the house at about 10 o'clock, so I'd spent the hours of the night staring at darkness. Then at about 4 in the morning I noticed some movement, a single figure creeping out of the door and going over to the horses. I nudged Constable Mills next to me, though he swears he wasn't, was asleep. There was no moon, so it was hard to make out, but I could see that the figure was carrying heavy bags and heading to the horse paddock. Whoever it was saddled one of the horses and mounted. We crept over to our horses and followed at a safe distance. This is it, I whispered to Mills. They're taking food to the Kellys. It was hard tailing the horse, what with there being no moon. After an hour I thought I'd lost them, then suddenly we came out of the trees. The horse and rider were on the other side of the clearing. I held my horse still, hoping we hadn't been seen, but it was too late. The rider spurred the horse, which galloped off. The chase was on then. We were gaining a little. The rider's hat blew back and I could see long black hair streamed out. She was wearing trousers and riding astride like a man, but I knew for sure it was Maggie Skilling, and her saddlebags were stuffed full of food for her brothers. Just as we thought we were going to catch her, she disappeared. Mills and I split up. I went up a ravine while Mills followed another track. The ravine was steep and narrow, but there was no sign of her. The first light of the morning was just starting to smear the horizon. A terrible thought came to me. What exactly was I going to do if I suddenly came across the Kellys' camp? If they were waiting at the end of this ravine, I'd be a sitting duck. I couldn't possibly manage 4 men by myself. Just then a rider came up behind me. I turned, pulling my gun. Luckily I didn't fire. It was Mills. The track he had followed had petered out. With guns drawn, we rode on down without a word. All I could hear was the pounding of my heart. We rode up with narrow gap for an hour, always feeling that every moment could be our last. Then the track skirted around a large fallen rock, and there in front of us was Maggie Skilling. She was sitting on a log with her thumbs pressed into her cheeks, her fingers waggling and her tongue stuck out. "G'day, boys," she said, out for some early morning air. I quickly glanced around. She seemed to be on her own. I dismounted and went to inspect her bulging saddlebags. If we couldn't have the Kellys, we'd have Maggie on suspicion of aiding and abetting the outlaws. I undid the buckles and pulled out the contents. The bags, both of them, were stuffed with tablecloths. When she saw my face, Maggie laughed till tears ran down her face.